Hi there, and welcome to my video, my live stream. This is my first one, so it will definitely be a learning experience for me and all of us. Um, if you are here and would like to just put your name in the chat, and also where you're from, and maybe any questions that you may have right off the bat, I will do my best to answer your questions along the way, and we can all have a little fun jelly printing session together. So the reason why I wanted to do this was just to kind of just reach out to my community and connect a little more with people who make some um, comments and ones that I see often. I would love to interact with a little more and maybe meet new friends. So I just wanted to kind of try something new. And so if you want to just put where you're from in the chat and any questions that you may have, I would love to answer them now or along the way. And I'm going to try to do a very descriptive jelly printing session to help you with any questions you may have with that. So today I'm just going to go over the basics of a jelly printing session. I'm going to show you step by step how to make a print. And then if you have any questions, I'll answer them. So I'm going to change my camera to go on my table so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. You can kind of see my microphone over here. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. I don't know if this is streaming or not. If you are watching this and it is streaming, could you just pop in the chat and tell me? Just so I'm not trying to figure this out. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is just show you the materials that I use. This is my 8x10 jelly plate, and I got it from Michael's, I believe. They have a lot of great coupons, so it's a great place to get stuff. They also have stuff online, so you can have it delivered if you don't have one near you. And I just keep it in between these little plastic things. It kind of keeps it juicy and tacky. Now, if you notice, I have some leftover stuff. That doesn't bother me, but some people do tend to um, clean it every time they use their gel plate, and you can do that with um, a baby wipe, or you could do it just with other paint. You put a layer of paint on and pull it off, and that'll get those little pieces off. This is another plate I have, and I call it my helper plate. So what it does is I use it to kind of blend colors or just kind of roll my roller onto it to get rid of excess paint. It's helpful to just have another area to blend before I put it on the main plate. Okay, so someone just told me I sounded echoey, so I am just using my microphone. I think my desktop microphone was on. All right, so this is the main plate that I'm going to be using, and what I tend to print on is um, just copy paper, plain old copy paper. So this is the print that I made the other day, and I thought this might be an easy thing to show you how to do it. Sorry, I'm getting a little cold. So this is just the copy paper I use. This is pretty thick, but you could use any, thickness. And then I use just a basic brayer. They come in all different widths. You can get a real wide one. You can get thinner ones, and anyone will do, honestly. You don't want to get too crazy about what you're using, just as long as you can actually do it. And then I often use this wax paper. It's called deli paper, and I use this a lot. If you watch my videos, you probably see me use it a lot. And I take the first layer of paint off with these because what it does is creates some collage paper that I can use later on. So it's like kind of getting two prints for one. Okay, so let's just go over some basics about actual jelly printing. So something to keep in mind is the first layer that you put down is the first layer you're going to see on your print. So the first layer I put down on this one was the blue and the green and that kind of aqua color. The pink is a little pronounced, so it looks like that was the first layer, but um, you just want to keep in mind how the layers are going to show up later on. And if you have a hard time visualizing it, you could almost like put a layer down, maybe take an imprint of a stencil, and then just pull your plate up and you can see what it's going to look like. It's going to look from the other side what you will see on your paper. So as you do more and more layers, that can be helpful to look at. So I'm going to show you the thickness of what to put down because I think that that's one of the things that people have a really hard time figuring out. How much paint? You don't want to put too much paint that it's goopy, but you also don't want to put not enough that it dries so quickly you can't do an imprint. So I'm putting a little piece of paper over here on the side so that when I'm done rolling, I can roll out the paint on the paper and get rid of the excess paint, especially if I want to change colors. So I'm just going to start with this blue. I'm going to make this again so you can kind of see how it's made. So we just start with a goop of blue. And if you're using more than one color, you don't want to add a ton. So I would say that's fine. This is a lot, but I'll move it around. And then just a little bit of green. Okay? And a lot of this is going to be about experimenting. You're going to have to figure out what works for your size gel plate, for the actual prints that you're making, what you're using the prints for. Do you want to use them for collage paper? Do you want to use them to actually frame? So these are all things to keep in mind. So we're just going to move it around pretty quickly and get some of that color. I'm not being too specific of where I'm putting the color. And that's one of the things that you kind of have to let go of when you use a jelly plate is how accurate you want everything to be. Because it really is kind of a big science experiment. But you kind of just move it around. Now, I would say this is a pretty good amount of paint. It's a little bit much, but I'm going to go with it. So for that first layer, I'm going to put the stencil down. And then I'm just going to pull up, put down the wax paper, the deli paper. Now this doesn't pull up as much paint as a regular piece of paper. So sometimes I have to do 2 layers, 2 folds. So you can kind of see how there's still paint. So I'm just going to use a regular piece of paper. Another little trick you could do is use the actual brayer to pull up. Put that pressure down to pull the paint up. You can also just use your fingers, go in between each little slot. The key is timing. You don't want to leave the paint down too long before you pull it up if you want to pull paint off of the plate. So now you can kind of see it's almost clear again, right? But then when we pull it up, we have the imprint, the stencil. Now this took off a lot more paint than it did for this one. You could see a lot more of that paint left on the plate. So again, it depends on what you want your print to look like. So what we're going to do is we're just going to let this dry. I normally give it about 2 to 3 minutes. I know a lot of people talk about leaving it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I haven't really experimented with it for that long because I get impatient, but I think it depends on the paint you're using, the humidity in the air, how fast things dry. You have to kind of experiment with that. So I'm just going to kind of put aside the paint colors that I'm going to use. I'm going to use a little of this. This is Naples yellow red, and I love fluorescent pink. And I'm also going to use a little parchment. It's like off-white. It has a nice little hue. In the meantime, we can kind of play with this as well. So if you wanted to do just a basic print, you could also do something first. If you wanted to use the stencil first, let me get another one. You could just put down a stencil, and then I'm just going to use the bright aqua green on the side here. And I'm going to roll my roller in it. Just to get the roller wet. And then I'm going to roll right over the stencil. So that makes a design right there through the stencil. And you can kind of see it's a little mishmashy up here, but Again, it's kind of a fun thing to experiment with. So we're going to let that dry. I'm going to go over here and just kind of feel this. You can kind of see nothing's coming up. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go very light with these colors because we don't want to lose the blue. So I'm not going to use a lot of paint. I'm just going to use a dab because you have to remember, even though it's a dab of each color, it's a lot of paint in total. So just kind of moving it around. I do notice that when you first start to roll, it creates like almost like a circle like that. So you want to move fast to kind of get rid of that circle. Or if you like the circle, you can keep it. Just getting rid of that excess paint and then moving to the parchment. So you have that circle right there. So then you can kind of blend as much as you like, or if you want to keep it simple, just let it go. Can't get too particular because it's not an exact science. And then just put the paper on top. When I first put the paper down, I always go around it a few times and really make sure that each part of the plate is attached to the paper because that layer on top of the paint is what's going to pull the first layer up. So you want to make sure everything is sticking to each other. And I also think sometimes that the heat from your hand can kind of help, but that might just be my imagination. Okay, so I will generally leave this again for only a few minutes. If I want the print to really stick, then I'll leave it for probably 5 minutes. That's about as max as I go. But I can already tell that it's sticking, so I'm just going to pull it. And voila, there it is. So you can kind of see how the different colors came through and the blue. The blue kind of blended over here with the white, so that probably wasn't totally dry, but made some interesting color. And then this was the leftover from my plate, which I kind of like. So it made kind of like a grungy print. So that's the basics of pulling a print. Let's see how this other one shows up. We're going to do, this is kind of a sheer color. It is green gold, but you can see down here it's pretty wet still. So I might just gently pull a little of that paint up. So it just took like the top layer of it off so it could dry because I could tell it was still real wet. And worst case, you can always fan it. A lot of people have asked about using a hair dryer on the gel plate, but it can, if you do the hair dryer directly on the plate, it will definitely warp it. So you don't want to do that. You can put it on cool and you can hair dry or a heat gun on top of paper. But I would not do it directly on the plate. So I'm just going to put some of the green gold over here and kind of use that as a helper plate. So I'm just making my brayer really full of paint, and then I'm just going to roll it over. I'm just going to put the paper on, and we'll just let that sit for a second. Some other things you could think about while doing your gel prints are to figure out if there are any like found objects that you can make kind of imprints with or patterns. Like I was kind of looking at this. This is probably cool. You could like just run some different colors through with this. You could also, this is just a makeup sponge. You could dip it in different colors and make these different blocks of color, almost like a stamp. And then, of course, you can use stamps, but if you wanted to come up with something more original, do that. You can also use leaves and um, what else? Branches. A lot of stuff outdoors is really cool. You could use pine cones to make imprints. There's a lot of different really neat things you could find in nature. All right, so let's see how this came out. Da-da-da. It's very bright, but you can see how that kind of was a little more pronounced. It had more paint down here than it did up there. But overall, it made a nice print. So I'm just going to check the chat, see if there's any um, I don't see any chat questions. So that is what I had scheduled for today. So this was a fun little experiment. I am curious to see how it all looks in the end. But if you have any questions about jelly printing, please don't hesitate to ask me. And I would love to do another session like this soon. If you have any ideas about any videos, I'm always open to showing you different things that I do. So please don't hesitate to give me those suggestions. And I also will be having a jelly print collage book coming out soon. I'm printing it myself on Amazon, and you'll be able to use those papers for your collage projects. It's kind of similar to the downloads that I have now available, but it'll be in an actual book where you can just rip the pages out. So thank you so much for coming by today. Really appreciate you being here. And let me see if I can get my camera. Aha, there we are. Next time I'm going to set up two cameras so it's not so wonky going back and forth. But anyway, thank you for coming today. It was wonderful to try this out, and hopefully we can see each other again soon.